I did write a book on UFOs, and I wrote a book on surviving death. And what I want to focus on now is the importance of the work I've done in the documentary film world, because books are great. People read books, but through film, you can reach millions of people at a level you just cannot with books, especially nowadays when people aren't reading as much. And I just want to kind of honor this film company and their director, who I'm going to introduce you to a little bit later, who I've been working with I've known these people since about 2008. We did a project together in 2011. And then we've done 2 projects in recent years, which I just want to show you a little bit about. And then we're going to have an update for you about the news series that I've been working on for the last couple of years that I know a lot of people are curious to know. It was being made for CNN, and people are curious to know what happened. It was supposed to air in July. So we have an update for you on that. And I just want to first kind of honor the work of Breakthrough Films, the company I've been working with, and their director, Ricki Stern, who's here, and I'm going to bring her up in a little bit. Because what's really challenging is to take some of these very kind of ethereal, non-physical, personal experiences that people have and translate them into visual imagery. And I remember when we first started working on Surviving Death, which was a 5-part series we did for Netflix, or I was assisting them. I was a consulting producer. We would sit around this table and they would all say, well, how do we translate that into something visual? It's just somebody's story. And we don't want to do recreations like people have done for years. They don't want to do something silly with animation and spooky music and all kind of weird stuff. So there was really a challenge for these filmmakers. And they have done an incredible job. And for those of you who saw Surviving Death, I think you realize what an incredible job they've done. Yeah. In really making it cinematic and beautifully visual, and also, being able to convey the meaning of what the story is that the person is telling. So this series, we began working on it in the summer of 2018, and it went up on Netflix in January of 2021, which was right at the height of the COVID thing. Of course, we had no idea that was going to happen when we started it. But it was kind of an amazing moment for it to come on when so many people were losing loved ones, and we're very interested in this. And okay. And I just wanted to share that it did get to number 4 in the most watched videos on Netflix. Yeah, so. And the series dealt with a whole lot of different topics relating to the question of survival path deaths, and there were a lot of personal stories from people. And I just want to show you 2 short clips to illustrate how beautifully done this series was. So here's one of them from episode 6, and I'm going to play this for you.
Some people said that reincarnation isn't true, but the very first time Atlas spoke about a past life, I knew it was actually something real. When Atlas was 1.5, he started having night terrors. His eyes would be open, and he would be screaming as if he was in pain for up to an hour at a time. This happened for years. I confided in his pediatrician, what do we do? No one really had an answer for why he was doing that. And then one day when he was 5 years old, we were just coming home and he was staring out the window. It was silent in the car. He just said out of nowhere, "I miss when my mom took me to the playground." And I said, "Oh, you mean me when I took you to the playground?" And he said, "No, my other mom with the really pretty hair." I thought he was just being silly, and so I said, "Oh, okay, so if you have another family, what were their names?" And he said, "Well, my mom, her name's Washington, but my name was Jalen Robinson." And then he said, when I was this child, someone killed me.
So we had a whole episode on reincarnation, but just to finish the story, his mom went on the internet and looked up the name Jalen Robinson, and she found out that a boy by that name was 19 months old when he was murdered by his babysitter. And it was in 2005, I believe. And he had the name Jalen Robinson, and also the mom's last name was Washington. So pretty phenomenal. And Jim Tucker from DOPS, from the Department of Perceptual Studies at University of Virginia, as soon as she found that information, she said, oh my God, and she contacted Dr. Jim Tucker. He came, and part of the story that was filmed was he brought 5 pictures that he showed to Atlas, his previous dad, his previous mom, his previous home, which he was all able to find through research, and other locations that he would have been familiar with in that past life, and he was able to identify all 5 of them accurately. He showed him like 2 or 3 that were the wrong ones and then the right one, and he was able to pick out all 5, and Jim was pretty impressed with that. So pretty interesting story. And then I just want to show you one other clip from Surviving Death. It's a little clip interview with Deborah Blum, who's talking about ghosts. Deborah Blum is a Pulitzer Prize-winning science journalist, and she's a professor of journalism at the University of Wisconsin. And she wrote this book about the history of William James's search for empirical evidence of the spirit world. And she's a prolific writer and academic and brilliant woman. And I love this little clip of her trying to deal with the topic of ghosts.
As long as there have been human civilizations, there's been reports of ghosts and encounters with the other. There's something about us that loves a good spooky story. You live this life full of energy and purpose and love and hope and dreams. And does all of that disappear? Your body disappears, but what about all that energy that you brought to living? Is there a kind of echo that we leave or a cosmic imprint of that? To me, it's not, do we believe in ghosts, but the fact that we continue to report them and see them. You receive an image, or you feel a touch, or you see someone unexpectedly, you hear their voice. Is this evidence that we can live on and communicate with each other? And would you ever want to see a ghost? I wouldn't. I really hope to never see a ghost, right?
Just again to highlight the visual qualities of that and how, all the filmmakers had to work with was just somebody sitting there giving them an interview. And they were able to transform it into something beautiful like that. And I find that really impresses me. The company is named Breakthrough Films, and I'm going to show you a couple more things, and then we're going to meet the creative force behind all of this. We have, as you all know, I was working with Breakthrough Films for the last few years on a 6-part series on UFOs. And this is also really interesting to me that today is more or less the 5th anniversary of the 2017 story. So I was given permission to show some clips from that series that's going to be, and Ricki Stern is going to tell you in a moment what's going to be happening with that series. But nobody has ever seen any of it before. So today you're going to see some of that for the first time. And I chose to pick... Yeah, glad you feel that way. Here's our friend David Fravor with the part of the New York Times story that was about him when we went to interview him. So what I did was I chose to show you some clips of Helen Cooper, who we were fortunate enough to get to interview for us for the series. She very rarely will go on camera. She was the reporter from the New York Times who worked with Ralph Blumenthal and myself to do that first story. And she also worked with us on the second story in 2019 about, which was about Ryan Graves and all the pilot encounters that were happening on the East Coast of the United States. And she is absolutely an extraordinarily gifted reporter. She's been with the Times since 2004, and she became a White House correspondent in 2009, and then she won a Pulitzer Prize, and she's just incredible. So when Ralph and I were told that we were going to be working with Helen Cooper, we were overjoyed, and so I'm going to kind of introduce you to her because I want to honor her for her role in the story, because we couldn't have done it without her, and I don't think many people are familiar with her. So here's one little clip for her from her explaining who she is, and then we'll see a longer one.
I think it was sometime in the fall of 2017. My boss, the Washington bureau chief, walked up to my desk and said, "Do you want to write about UFOs?" And we both sort of laughed, and she said, Leslie Kean had information about a secret Pentagon program. And that was easily, to me, fascinating. There's no way I don't want to write about it. I'm Helen Cooper. I'm the Pentagon correspondent for the New York Times. I've been with the paper since 2004. You can always tell a Pentagon reporter, because we like to say that's the best beat in Washington. You're on aircraft carriers, you're on fighter jets, I've been on bombers, I've been on the B-1 and the B-2. You're on naval destroyers in the South China Sea. You're never bored.
Yeah, she's awesome. And so just to set up, again, this is from the series that has not even been shown yet, so it's very cool to me that you guys get to see it. The next video picks up after, so Ralph and I started working with Helen, and we took her down to Washington, where she met Lou Elizondo. We spent hours in a restaurant sitting with Lou, and he was very careful to be sitting with his back to the wall and his face to the door, and in a place where there wasn't very many people. And you know, Helen just sat there. I mean, Helen Cooper had never been exposed to UFOs at all. She didn't know anything. She never expected this. It was just sort of like, yeah, like she said, I like to do this, because it was related to the Pentagon. So she sat there talking to Lou for hours, taking these notes and asking him questions. And then I remember I flew down to Washington and introduced her to Dave. I went out to dinner with her and David Fravor. It was the first time I had met him. He told his whole story in detail, and she was like, oh my God, taking notes, you know. And then, you know, we were working on it, and we needed to get an interview with Harry Reid, because he was the person who had made the program possible that we were writing our story about. And so Helen was able to set this interview up by going through one of her contacts at the Times. Now, this was before Harry Reid had come public at all. So we didn't even know if we'd ever get an interview with him. It wasn't like he is, like we all know him now, that he's been out so many times on so many things. This was the first time, and we didn't know if we'd get the interview. We got the interview. She flew out there, but we didn't even know what he would say to her. We thought he might not give us anything interesting. And we kind of felt like the story really hinged on him. We really needed him. So this little clip picks up where Helen is describing what happened after she finished the interview with Harry Reid.
At the end of the interview with Senator Reid, I walked out of the Bellagio, and there's a bridge from the Bellagio over the Strip to whatever is on the other side, and it's a pedestrian bridge. And I called Leslie and Ralph, and they were on the phone with Lou, so we're in this four-way phone call, and I was like, he confirmed everything.
Harry Reid had never spoken out before about this program, so this was like the first moment in which he came out on the topic, and that was a big deal.
We were ecstatic because that moment we knew we had it. It's like, no matter what happens next, we have the story. The lead up to the actual publication of the story on December 17th was torturous. Our editors were constantly saying, make sure we put skeptics in there, we put people challenging this notion. This caution by our editors were starting to naturally get on our nerves. It's like, run the story already. We've like dotted every possible I we can dot. And we knew at this time that Politico was chasing the story as well. It's Saturday morning, I still haven't posted the story. I think it's 11 or 12. And we're hearing from Lou and from other people that Politico is about to post. And I'm on the phone with the guy who's the Saturday editor going, publish, just publish already. And he's tinkering around with what kind of headline do we want? I was just like, publish, publish. And he finally posted the story. The story is up, and I'm like, thank God it's up. I put my phone in my pocketbook. I go into Costco, and I'm buying, I don't know, what, tenderloin for Christmas. And I'm in there for about an hour, and I come back out, and my phone is like, has blown up.
In a striking expose published over the weekend, the New York Times revealed the
Pentagon
existence
has confirmed the existence
of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
People were calling me, and they were like a text, and it was just like, the response was huge.
It was a firestorm.
Tens of millions of dollars for the project were pushed through.
It was all over the place.
Unveiled the existence of a real-life X-Files department.
It was all over the world.
Vi känner inte igen det.
Mais selon Luis Elizondo, qui a dirigé le programme confidentiel,
It just went like wildfire. So, yeah. So, the series has 5 episodes, and it covers a lot of, it's really about the government's relationship to this topic. It goes into a whole lot of cases. This was Helene when she was getting her makeup on. The complexity of what's involved, I also learned from being associated with this, the complexity of the work that these filmmakers do, the amount of equipment that they have, the hours that they spend fiddling with the lights and setting everything up is just extraordinary. And these are just some of I'll just show you a few little stills of our production. This was Chad Underwood, who was interviewed about, he was the Navy pilot who filmed the FLIR video, really famous FLIR video. We've got Jacques Vallée in the series. We've got a bunch of scientists, Michio Kaku, who is incredible. And this is a scientist named Derek Pitts, who not that many people may have heard of, who's at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. It's like a natural history museum. He's absolutely awesome. And we had an interview with John Podesta in DC. We've got a lot of other former government officials, people like Lou Elizondo, of course, and others that I can't even think of right now. And of course, Chris Mellon is featured in the series. And Chris and his wife can attest to the amount of gear that got dumped into their house in order to get these gorgeous shots that our filmmakers were able to get. We also have a bunch of elected representatives in the series. This is Gallego, what's his name? Ruben Gallego, who's one of the people who initiated legislation in DC, and also citizen activists. And there's a whole episode about the role that citizen activists and citizen scientists have played. This is James Fox. And we have him in the series. We revisit the 2007 press conference that I did with James Fox. And I just wanted you to see, just for that interview, look at the complexity of the equipment. Like, how many screens and cameras do you need, right? It took them 3 hours to set this up. They brought in all the gear the day before because it would have taken so long. It took over my whole apartment. And this is the shot they got from it. I hope they liked it, So I just want to bring up to the stage now Ricki Stern, who is the director of these 2 brilliant productions. Got to get a... And I also want to... I think we're going to have another mic for you. Ricki has been making films with her company forever. She makes all kinds of films that are not weird like these. And right now, she has a film on HBO that literally just premieres last week, which I recommend she and her co-director. It's called My So-Called High School Rank. Really a beautiful movie. She's done shows for HBO and Netflix and Showtime and just about every network there is for years. And so she's gonna tell you now, right, about what's happening with the series that we made for CNN that was supposed to air in July.
Yes. First of all, there are people here who I interviewed. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There are people here I interviewed like a year or two ago, and so I'm thanking them again. And it's very frustrating. The series was supposed to air in July, and as maybe you know or don't, but CNN has had a lot of turmoil and has merged with Warner Media, with Discovery and HBO, and they closed their CNN Plus. In October, they closed CNN Originals and CNN Films, and ours was a product of CNN Originals. And many, many, many wonderful projects done by very talented people have been shelved, and it's really very frustrating. And a lot of people have lost their jobs. However, and Leslie knows, because Leslie and I have been like texting each other every day for months with anxiety about this and some tears on my part. So what I have been told is that it won't sit on a shelf, that it will come out in 2023, and it was sold to, I can't say yet because they haven't, signed all the paper, but it will be on a streamer and on a channel, and Leslie will, of course, put it out there, and it should, hopefully, they'll do some press on it as well. But it's been Chris Mellon, all those other people out here who are in it. I'm so sorry. It's been so long in the making.
Right. And I think this new company is really excited about it, and there's going to be a lot of energy behind it.
I hope so.
It's not just you hope they'll do some publicity.
No, they're very excited. But anyway, this is all inside baseball and boring, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I think maybe people would be interested to hear, Ricki, like, you hadn't really been exposed to these topics that much until you met me, right? And like, what was it like for you to become so intimately involved with these topics as somebody who's like not in that world, and what was it like to transform them into this visual art that you did? I mean,
well, Surviving Death is, as Leslie was saying, is 6 hours on Netflix, and very much they were very much interested in it because of Leslie's book. Having it laid out and having her. Her outline, which was very thoroughly researched and spent a lot of time, they could see that it had a trajectory, that she went in sort of exploring on her own personal life, a loss of someone she loved, and not just one, but several people in her life, and just saying, well, is there consciousness outside of the body that lives on? And explored it with such dynamic, educated, prolific, researchers and scientists, that it was very interesting, and that became the genesis of the series. People always ask me, like, well, now are you more convinced, or are you more doubtful? And I think it sort of depends on the day, and who I spoke to. I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think it's one that finally can be treated in a serious manner. And there are scientists out there who are looking at consciousness outside the brain. The reality is we really don't know what happens when we die, right? So why not be open to exploring it? So that's what I'd have to say about that.
Right. And, a lot of people in this room are experiencers, as you know, and our intention was to incorporate some of that into our series for CNN. We actually did a whole bunch of shooting with some fantastic people on the topic. And then Ricki's going to tell us, because I don't dare, I might say the wrong thing. I got to turn it over to her. What happened about all of that?
We went to Esalen. There was a really interesting, fascinating conference in Esalen about this time last year.
Run by Jeff Kripal, who's
run by Jeff Kripal.
And me, but I got COVID during it, so.
Yeah, and she did.
You were there, and she was terrified.
Well, no, because you said I have a cold, and I was like, really? Maybe it's something more than a cold. But anyway, she didn't wear a mask, and
I didn't know I had it. Then I wore a mask.
But anyway, the conference was amazing, and I think I'm speaking from the feedback I got from CNN. I think for CNN, all through the process of doing a series about UAP, UFOs, the history, the U.S. government's involvement, they go through standards and practices because it is a news organization. So everything has to be vetted in a way that is, quantified and clarified and has sources to it. And I think with the Esalen and the stories about experiencers, they just weren't ready for it. They just I don't even quite remember. It's been like more than a year. I know. Do
they
you
just
remember?
they said it's a bridge. It's a bridge we're not going to cross, or something like that.
I think it was just too much for them, and potentially for their audience. I can't even really say why, but ultimately, unfortunately, it's not in this series. But we're really interested in pursuing it for
Yes,
a
we
future.
are. This
A
is not the
future.
end.
No,
That's the direction we're going, right?
Yeah.
Great.